The sun had vanished behind the jagged mesas, leaving only a smear of fire on the horizon. Wind scraped dust along the empty road into Gritvale, a town too tired to remember why it existed. Most windows were shuttered, saloons dark, the church long collapsed. But the forge still burned. Clara Mayfield stumbled through the fading light, each step heavier than the last. Her boots were shredded. Her dress, once white, hung in tatters, soaked in sweat, ash and blood not all her own. Her hair clung to her face in matted ropes, her lips cracked from thirst. She had been walking for days, or weeks. Time had long since stopped making sense. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to keep going. Then, through the haze, she saw it, a red glow flickering against soot-stained windows. The rhythmic clang of metal on iron, steady and deep. It was a sound of life, of warmth, of something real. She crossed the threshold and collapsed into the dirt, just feet from the open forge. A dark silhouette stood inside, tall, broad, moving with slow precision as he hammered metal under flame. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'll do anything for shelter tonight." The hammer stopped. Sparks floated in the air like fireflies. The man stepped forward, his eyes hidden under the brim of a soot-black hat, his shirt soaked with sweat, sleeves rolled to thick forearms marked with scars. He didn't speak for a long moment. "Anything's a big word," he said finally, voice low and rough as gravel. "I mean it," she said, trying to push herself upright. "You don't have to feed me. Please, just somewhere not out there." The man looked at her, eyes like iron cooled in ice. Then, with a grunt, he set the hammer down. "There's an old cot in the back. You touch anything that's locked, I throw you out. You lie to me, I throw you out. Understand?" She nodded, her limbs trembled. "Then come in before the coyotes get curious." She staggered past him into the dim interior. It smelled of metal, ash and oil, but it was warm. It was enough. He brought her water in a tin cup. She drank too fast, choked, then drank again. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer his name. "I'm Clara," she said finally. He gave no reply. In the silence, the fire cracked. The man returned to the forge and Clara sank onto the cot, her body aching, but safe. For now. If you're still here and already feeling the heat rising, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's more coming. And it only gets wilder from here. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, the blacksmith just lit the fire. Clara's fingers trembled as she held the edge of the cot. The warmth of the forge bled into her skin, a slow thawing that almost hurt. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt safe enough to close both eyes. The blacksmith, still nameless, moved methodically, setting tools back in their places, wiping his hands with a dirty rag. He didn't look at her again, not even when her stomach growled loud enough to echo. "There's stew," he muttered. "Cold, but it won't kill you." She blinked, surprised. He poured it into a dented tin bowl and set it on a wooden crate near her. No spoon, no talk, just the sound of embers and the weight of his silence. Clara ate with her fingers, scooping thick pieces of potato and beans. She didn't care about manners. Hunger made animals of everyone eventually. "You always take in strays?" she asked between bites. "No," he said without looking up. She waited for him to say more. He didn't. The room was small, an anvil, a forge, a battered workbench, a locked chest in the corner, its hinges thick with dust. Her eyes lingered on it a second too long. "Don't," he warned, without turning. "I wasn't—" "You were." She lowered her gaze, swallowing hard. "I don't want trouble," she said. "I'm just trying to—" "Survive," he finished. "Everyone is." He picked up a piece of iron, examined it under the flickering light, then set it back down. The quiet between them stretched, brittle and sharp. "Why are you running?" he asked suddenly. "I didn't say I was." "You didn't have to." Clara hesitated. Truth was dangerous, but lies were worse. She remembered his rule. "There was a man," she said carefully, "a preacher. Said he was my guardian. Took me in after my folks died. Preached hellfire, then handed it out behind closed doors." The blacksmith's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. "I left. Took what I could carry." He's looking for me. You steal from him? Her fingers tightened on the bowl. No, not money. He didn't press further. She studied him, the way his eyes scanned the tools, never her. Like he was trying not to see her too clearly. Your name? She asked. Elijah. Thank you, Elijah. He gave a slight nod, then returned to the forge. The fire roared as he pumped the bellows, filling the room with light and shadow. Clara leaned back against the wall, eyes half closed. For the first time in weeks she felt something almost like calm, but outside wind whistled through the eaves. Somewhere coyotes cried. She wasn't safe, not really. But for tonight the door was shut, the fire was lit, and the blacksmith hadn't turned her away. That was enough. The fire had faded to glowing coals. Elijah slept in a chair, boots still on, arms crossed. Clara lay curled on the cot, but sleep came only in pieces, thin, restless things chased by memory. A noise snapped her eyes open. Crunching footsteps outside, too heavy for coyotes, too careful for drunks. She slid off the cot silently and crept toward the wall. Through a thin crack in the boards, she saw them, 3 figures moving slow, rifles slung, lanterns low. One held a crumpled piece of paper, a wanted poster. Her blood turned cold. She turned toward Elijah, heart racing. He was awake, eyes open, sharp. He held a finger to his lips and stood without a sound. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. He moved toward the door, slow and sure. Clara pressed herself into the shadows. A knock. Evening, a voice called, slick, practiced. Sorry to bother so late, looking for someone. Elijah opened the door just wide enough to lean into the frame. Don't see how that's my concern. The man smiled, teeth white in the dark. Young girl, brunette, might be traveling alone, stole something precious, dangerous too, least that's what the Reverend says. Reverend? Elijah asked flatly. Silas Rook, he's a man of God, and he don't lie. Elijah snorted. Plenty of liars preach better than they pray. A pause. Then, you seen her or not? Elijah looked past him into the night. No girl here, just me and the fire. The man narrowed his eyes. Mind if we look around? I do. You refusing the law? I don't see a badge. The standoff stretched. The air between them crackled like steel in flame. Then finally the man smiled again. All right then. If you see her, I'll be sure to pray on it. They walked away, slow and bitter. Elijah watched until their lanterns disappeared into the night. When he closed the door, Clara was still in the corner, fists clenched. You didn't tell them, she whispered. I don't like strangers telling me what's mine, he said. Then more quietly, and I know a lie when I hear one. She stepped forward. I didn't steal from him, not really, but I took something. Elijah didn't ask what. Instead, he moved to the forge and stoked the fire again. Sparks leapt up like stars reborn. You stay hidden. If they come back, you're not here. Understood? Clara nodded. Elijah poured himself a drink from a dusty bottle. Don't make me regret this. You won't. The fire warmed them both, but neither spoke again that night. Each held their own secrets. She owed him now, more than shelter, more than warmth. And for the first time, Clara began to wonder if she could trust someone again. Just maybe. Morning broke grey and dry, with wind whispering dust through the cracks in the walls. Clara rose early, her muscles stiff, her eyes gritty. Elijah was already at the anvil, hammering metal with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. She watched him for a while, then picked up a broom leaning in the corner and started sweeping without a word. By midday she'd cleaned the whole forge, floor swept, tools oiled, scraps sorted. Elijah didn't comment, but when she turned to leave the water bucket outside, he handed her a piece of jerky without looking up. You're not useless, he said. High praise, she muttered, but smiled anyway. That night, after the forge dimmed, and they sat on opposite ends of the room with the quiet between them, Clara reached into her satchel. From a secret pocket, she pulled a bundle wrapped in torn flannel. I said I didn't steal money, she whispered, but I did take this. Elijah looked up slowly. She unfolded the cloth. A cracked leather pouch, a piece of stained parchment, and a half-burned letter. The map was crude, hand-drawn lines scrawled over terrain she didn't understand. Rivers, canyons, a cross marked deep in desert country. On the edge, a name, Valley of Ash. Elijah's eyes narrowed. Where did you get this? It was in the preacher's chest, hidden under the floor. I found it when I was cleaning. He reached for the letter, his hands suddenly tense. The seal was broken, scorched at the corner. He unfolded it carefully, reading in silence. His lips moved once, then again. General Beauregard. Clara blinked. What? This letter's from the war, Confederates, it's real. She hesitated. So the map, it matches a rumor I heard years ago. A stash of gold meant for Southern troops, never delivered, lost in the canyons. She felt her pulse quicken. Then it's true? Maybe, or bait. Maybe Rook wanted it for himself. Clara leaned in. That's why he's chasing me. Not because I ran. Because I found this. Elijah folded the letter slowly, eyes still fixed on it. If this is real, he said, it's worth dying over. I don't want to die. Then you'd better stop showing it to people. She laughed, but it was a fragile sound. So what now? She asked. He stared into the coals. You're not safe. If this map's what it seems, they'll keep coming. You stay, you bring trouble. You go, you walk into worse. And you? I've already got trouble. They sat in silence again. Clara looked at the map, then at him. We could go together, find it, end it. He didn't answer, but he didn't say no. The days passed under smoke and sweat. Clara rose with the sun and worked until her arms shook, learning the rhythm of iron and heat. Elijah never praised, never scolded. But he let her swing the hammer. That was enough. She blistered her palms the first week, burned her sleeve, cursed under her breath. He showed her how to shape a horseshoe, how to balance the weight, how to read the color of heated metal. You're teaching me, she said once. I'm showing you how not to die stupid, he replied. And yet, there was something steadier in the way he watched her now. A flicker of respect, perhaps. She learned to stand her ground, to breathe through pain, to listen. Still, at night, sleep came harder. The memory of the letter burned in her mind. The preacher's voice haunted her dreams. Then came the poster. It was nailed to the saloon door. Wanted, Clara Mayfield for theft and endangerment. $200 reward. Dead or alive, her name, her face, drawn too well. She stared at it until her fingers went numb. Someone had talked. She ripped it down and stuffed it in her coat. But by the time she got back to the forge, Elijah had already seen another copy. They're spreading fast, he said. Then I need to leave. No. She blinked. You don't get to decide that. If you run now, you won't last a day. You know that. She stepped closer. I'm not dragging you into this. It's already too late. I'm not your problem, Elijah. He looked at her then, long and hard. You're not my ruin either. The forge went quiet. Her hands trembled, but she didn't speak. You think I let you stay just to be kind, he asked. I saw something in you, fire, same as mine. Different kind, but the same heat. Clara turned away. He's going to find me. And next time he won't send hired men. I know. I don't want you hurt because of me. You won't be the reason. She stared at the map that now sat rolled and hidden beneath a floorboard. A choice. A path drawn in ink and blood. She sat beside him, both of them silent as the coals hissed and popped. Then what do we do? She asked softly. Elijah looked toward the door, toward the desert. First, he said, we stop hiding. The church bell rang for the first time in months, its cracked tone scraping the dry morning air. Gritvale stirred like a corpse, twitching back to life. The preacher had arrived. He rode in on a white mare dressed in black, tall, silver-haired, with a voice like silk on a knife's edge. Reverend Silas Rook smiled at every soul he passed. Women nodded. Men tipped hats. Children watched in awe. He stepped off the horse, brushed dust from his coat, and handed out coins to the needy. Then he pinned a fresh poster to the saloon wall. "My lost lamb," he told the crowd, "has wandered far. But with your help, I'll bring her home." Inside the forge, Clara watched from the window, jaw tight. Elijah stood behind her, arms crossed. "He looks like he owns the town," she said. "He talks like he owns God," Elijah muttered. The saloon filled with whispers. Rook bought drinks for everyone, told stories of salvation and sin, spoke of Clara like a child gone astray. "She's confused," he said, voice heavy with false sorrow. "But I forgive her. She'll come back to the fold. I'll see to it." Clara flinched. "Don't listen to him," Elijah said. "He's poisoning them," she whispered. "They'll turn on me. Then we don't give them the chance." That night they packed. Elijah loaded his saddlebags with water, tools, dried meat. Clara rolled the map and hid it beneath her blouse. When the stars rose, they left through the back, past the dead apple tree and the rusted wheelbarrow, silent as ghosts. They took the mule path out of town, skirting the edge of the canyon. Gritvale shrank behind them, swallowed by dust. They didn't speak until dawn. "I thought you'd say no," Clara said finally. "I thought you'd leave without asking." "Why'd you come?" Elijah paused. "Because there's a fire in you I haven't seen in a long time. And because if I stay, I'll burn with nothing left." They rode until the sky turned red again. At a high ridge, they stopped to rest. Clara looked back. Smoke rose from the direction of the forge. She clenched her fists. "He burned it." "He always did like fire," Elijah said. Clara stared at the horizon. "I won't run anymore." Elijah handed her a revolver. "Then learn to fight." She took it without flinching. Below them stretched miles of stone and shadow, canyon after canyon, carved by wind and time. Somewhere down there was the cross marked on the map, and maybe gold, or maybe just answers. They turned toward the west, where the trail narrowed and the cliffs grew darker. Behind them, Gritvale went silent again. But ahead, only ash, rock, and whatever they had the strength to face. The ashlands stretched for miles in every direction, an endless maze of jagged stone, sun-scorched earth, and silence so deep it pressed on the bones. Elijah led the way, his coat flapping in the dry wind, while Clara kept close, eyes scanning the horizon. They hadn't spoken in hours. There was nothing to say that hadn't already been burned into their thoughts. Twice they spotted smoke trails behind them. Someone was following. Elijah didn't say it aloud, but Clara saw the way he checked his rifle more often now. On the fourth day, their water ran low. The sun peeled skin and patience alike. They reached a dried riverbed and camped in the shadow of a crumbling cliff. Clara studied the map again, her fingers trembling. "We're close," she said. "The marker's just beyond the next ridge." "Or it's a lie," Elijah said, voice flat. "I don't care anymore," she snapped. "I just need to know." He looked at her, then nodded. That night, a rattlesnake coiled near her boots. Elijah shot it clean through the head. She didn't flinch, just skinned it and roasted the meat. Hunger made everything simpler. They ate in silence. Later she spoke, voice barely more than breath. "You ever lose someone?" He nodded. "Wife? Son? Fire took 'em. Long time ago." She didn't ask more. He didn't offer. In the morning, they climbed the final ridge. The path narrowed, cliffs rising like broken teeth. A black hole yawned ahead, a cave entrance, half buried under landslide rubble. Clara felt her chest tighten. This is it. They lit a lantern and stepped inside. The air was thick, the silence unnatural. Bones crunched underfoot, animal, maybe not. Farther in, they found it. A room hollowed from stone. Confederate rifles rusted in the corners, empty crates with faded government stamps. And in the center, a heavy chest, sealed shut with a chain. Clara knelt, heart pounding. "This is real," she whispered. Elijah didn't move. He scanned the shadows, then nodded. "We'll break it open." They pried the chain loose, fingers bloodied, breaths short. The lock snapped. Inside, coins, bars, documents, all real. Gold, heavy and dark, untouched by time. Clara stared, overwhelmed. And then, the echo of footsteps. She turned. A voice rang out, low and cruel. "Should have run farther." Figures stepped into the cave, 2 men with rifles, their faces smeared with dust. Behind them came another, slower, deliberate. Clara's blood ran cold. "Elijah," she whispered. He raised his weapon. Too late. Gunfire exploded in the narrow space. Sparks flew from stone. Clara dove behind the chest, heart slamming, ears ringing. Elijah fired twice. 1 man fell. The other ducked behind a rock. "Elijah!" she screamed. He staggered, blood darkening his shirt. The cave shuddered with violence, and they were no longer alone. The cave reeked of gunpowder and blood. Smoke clung to the walls, swirling in the lantern light. Elijah knelt, 1 hand pressed hard against his side, blood spilling between his fingers. Clara grabbed him, dragging him behind a crate as bullets pinged off the stone. "You're hit," she said, voice shaking. "I noticed," he grunted, trying to steady his aim. A figure moved in the smoke, then dropped as Elijah fired. Only 1 left. Then silence. Clara dared to peek. The last man was gone, his rifle left behind. "Elijah!" A sound echoed from the cave mouth. Slow, steady, unafraid. Clara's stomach turned to ice. She knew that walk. Reverend Silas Rook stepped into view, coat swirling, pistol at his side. His eyes found her through the smoke, and he smiled like the devil himself. "Hello, Clara." She stood slowly, heart racing. "You followed me all this way?" she asked. "You made it easy," he said. "A girl with no home leaves a trail." Elijah tried to rise, but Clara pushed him back gently. Rook's voice echoed. "I forgave you, Clara. I preached your name in every town, offered coin for your safety. And this is how you repay me?" She stepped forward. "By surviving." He tilted his head. "You were never meant to carry that burden. That gold was for a cause. Sacred. It was stolen. Sanctified," he corrected. "You killed for it." "I judged," he replied, "as I was called to do." Her fingers brushed the handle of Elijah's revolver beneath her coat. Rook's eyes flicked down. He saw the motion, but didn't move. "You think you can end this here?" he asked. "You're a child with a borrowed gun." Clara took 1 slow step closer. "You raised me to fear God," she said, voice steady. "But I only ever feared you." He lifted his pistol. She was faster. 2 shots rang out, deafening in the stone chamber. Rook staggered. His gun clattered to the floor. Clara stood frozen, breath heaving, revolver still raised. He sank to his knees, then fell, blood pooling beneath him. The final sermon. Silent. Elijah groaned behind her. She turned, rushed to his side. "You killed him," he rasped. She nodded, tears welling. "You did what I couldn't." She pressed her hand over his wound, her own trembling. "Don't talk. Save your strength." He looked at her, his face pale. "It's too deep." "No," she whispered. His hand gripped hers. "The gold's yours. Make it count." She shook her head, choking back sobs. "Not like this." But his eyes were already slipping closed. Clara knelt beside him, heart shattering in silence. Above them, the lantern flickered. Gold glinted in the chest, and around her, the cave was still once more. Clara sat beside Elijah's body, her hands streaked with blood and dirt, the cave echoing with the aftermath of silence. The gold gleamed in the chest beside her, but it felt colder than stone. Across the chamber, Rook's body lay twisted, his eyes wide, frozen in that final moment. She watched him without pity. Minutes passed, or hours. When she finally moved, it was slow, deliberate. She wiped her face, stood, and walked to the fallen reverend. She crouched, searching his coat. A second letter, sealed and stained, lay in his inner pocket. The handwriting matched the first. She pocketed it without reading. His revolver, finely polished, rested nearby. She picked it up, then hesitated, and tossed it into the dark. She didn't need his weapon. Back at Elijah's side, she gathered him gently, wrapped him in a blanket from their pack. Her hands trembled, but her gaze was hard now, clear. There would be time to break later. Not here. Outside, dawn threatened the edge of the sky. She used what strength she had to carry him out of the cave. Her back screamed, her legs buckled, but she didn't stop. Not once. She buried him beneath a tall stone, far enough from the path that scavengers wouldn't find him. She didn't cry. She didn't speak, just stood over the grave until the sun was fully risen. Then she turned back to the cave. The gold waited. Real, heavy, paid for in blood. She stared at it a long time. Then she packed only what she could carry, just enough to start over. No greed, no legacy, just freedom. The rest she scattered, coins tossed into the dark, bars buried under rock, papers burned to ash. She made sure no one else would chase this path, no one else would die for it. She left the cave as it was meant to be, hollow. By the time she reached the next ridge, her body ached and her throat burned, but something inside her had changed, not hardened, clarified. She wasn't running anymore. As she crested the final hill, she looked back once, just once, and whispered, "Thank you." Then she walked on. A town waited ahead, a new name, a new fire. She would build something from the ruin, because that's what Elijah had seen in her. Not weakness, not fragility, strength forged in pain. And that strength was hers now. Forever. Months passed. Dust still clung to the wind, but it felt different now. Less like a warning, more like a memory. In a new town with no name she'd ever spoken aloud, Clara Mayfield became someone else. May Brandt. She signed it quietly when she bought the blacksmith shop at the edge of town. The old owner had lost 2 fingers and too much time. She paid in gold coins, worn smooth by the years. No one asked questions. Gold had a way of silencing curiosity. She rebuilt the forge herself, laid each stone, hung Elijah's hammer above the anvil. The pendant he once wore now rested against her collarbone, its weight a reminder, not a burden. Every morning she lit the fire, and every night she kept it burning. People came, a horse in need of shoes, a boy with a broken blade. A widow seeking hinges for her door. Clara worked quietly, her hands steady, her eyes sharp. They whispered about her, of course, the woman who didn't speak of her past, the one who never prayed but always listened. She didn't need their trust. She earned it. One afternoon a girl knocked on her door, 12, maybe 13, dirty, thin, terrified. Clara saw herself in the girl's eyes. "Please," the girl said, "I'll do anything for shelter tonight." Clara didn't hesitate. She opened the door wide and stepped aside. That night, 2 bowls of stew sat on the crate table. The girl ate like survival was still uncertain. Clara just watched the fire, quiet. When the girl asked her name, she said, "May." That was all, and it was enough. Days turned to weeks. Spring crept back into the world. Flowers bloomed on the hillsides. Birds returned to the trees. One morning, Clara found herself standing at the edge of town, watching the road stretch out to the horizon. She thought of Rook, of the fire he carried and the faith he twisted, of the letter she had burned without ever reading. She thought of Elijah, who had chosen to stay when he could have run. Of the gold, buried where no map would ever find it again. She thought of herself, not the scared girl who begged for shelter, but the woman who had built something with her own hands. And for the first time she smiled without sorrow. She turned back toward the forge, toward the sound of metal and purpose. The fire was calling, and she answered. If you've followed Clara's journey all the way here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Stories like hers deserve to be remembered, and there are many more waiting to be told. Click the video on screen now to find out what other secrets Reverend Rook left buried in the West.